Welcome to Build. And I think everybody in this room has had the chance to attend at least one talk so far, like the first talk of the day at 11:30 or 10:30. How was it? Did people like what they heard? How was the reaction? Did you guys have fun? It was full. Good news is all the talks that are full will be available on video, and they will be available within the Build app. So all of you got the device. The device has what we call the Build app, and 12 hours after the talk, within 12 hours after the talk, you will have access to the video feed for that particular talk. So you'll see the slide deck, you'll hear the words that the presenters said, and it's all available to everybody. And it's also available on web. So in case you missed out on any of the talks this morning, or if you're missing out on a talk right now, the Build app is your friend. So other than the fact that you didn't get to attend your talk, did you have fun? OK, good. So I'm Manav Mishra. I'm a group program manager on Windows. And I'm here to talk to you about how, in Windows 8, all Metro-style apps can seamlessly access your files no matter where the file resides. Now, the file could be a file on the local file system, because Windows 8 is the PC reimagined, right? One of the core attributes of a PC is the fact that it has a file system. Phone OSs don't have file systems. PCs do, right? So anything which is on your local file system is available to your app. Anything which is on a network drive that's visible to your local file system is visible to your app. If your app has data on the web, files on the web, the app can easily consume the data within its own experience. And finally, as you heard Stephen and Julie and Jensen and Alesh talk about the app-to-app framework, was that cool or not? What do you guys think about the app-to-app picking framework thing? It's cool. It's unprecedented. It's not existed on any platform. It's the first time that it's being done on Windows. It's the first time it's being done. I haven't seen a parallel to it so far. So we'll talk more about that today. So we'll talk more about how your app can either consume data from another app or be a provider for data via the app-to-app picking contract. So that, in a nutshell, is what we are going to talk about. Now, is that exciting or not? I know it's after lunch. People are warming up. I'm excited. All right? So let's start off. Files. Why are files important? Like we talk about files, we talk about, everyone knows what files are. Everyone has a good feel for what files are. But files are important because they form the basis of our computing experience. Sometimes we create files explicitly. So anytime we create a Word document, a PowerPoint slide deck, an Excel spreadsheet, we are actually explicitly creating a file on the system. Sometimes we create files implicitly. Anytime you take a photo using your digital camera or your phone and transfer it to your PC, guess what? You've created a file. Anytime you buy music from your favorite online music store, guess what? You're creating a file. So creation of files is sort of the bread and butter of your basic computing experience. And that's why they're important. We use them and create them every day. But, as I just mentioned, the various scenarios, the implicit scenarios, the explicit scenarios, they live in various places. Oftentimes, we take photos using a digital camera, transfer them to a PC, and then we upload them to our favorite social networking sites. Like we want to share these photos. We want to share them with people we care about. We want to share them with friends, with families, with coworkers. So what's happening is there is this whole proliferation of file system locations happening in your basic computing experience. This is what users end up doing. And then each of these locations has its own unique restrictions and access models. So for example, if you have files on your local file system, you are exposing, you as a user are being exposed to the semantics of open and save. And you, as a developer, has to think about those semantics when creating that experience for the user. If you have files on a website or on a social networking site, users and developers both have to think about upload and download. When the file happens to be on a device, now the device could be any form of a computing device. It could be a phone. It could be a companion device, such as a slate. You need to think about sync. You need to worry about, oh, how do I get this information from here to there? So there are so many different primitives. There are so many different access models. There are so many different restrictions that everybody has to worry about. So in Windows 8, as we were reimagining the Windows 8 file experience in context of everything else that we did in Windows 8, we said, let's make it seamless. Let's make it easy. Let's make it just like air, for users and developers. So we are going to talk more about that today. All right? So going back to my slide, files in Windows 8. So anytime your application gets installed, anytime a Metro-style application that we have been talking about gets installed, every application gets what we call app data for free. So app data is a location on the file system that is unique to your application. Our app model ensures that there's complete sandboxing of app data. So no other app can actually peep into your app data and figure out what data you have stored there. So there's complete sandboxing because of the user confidence promise of the app model. We make sure that there's 100% sandboxing available to your application. And you don't have to do anything for this. The moment you write an application, think of a Hello World application, and it gets installed, it gets app data for free. And then when the app gets uninstalled, this location gets blown away as well. So this is tied only to the application and unique to the application. Then we'll talk a little more about this. You can get access to your local files. So the popular file system locations, such as videos, pictures, documents, music, are all available to your application via what we call the manifest declaration. So Jeff Johnson has a great talk at 3:30, I believe. You should all go to the talk to learn more about the capability model, and we'll discuss this in greater detail. So the manifest model is very simple. All you need to do is use what we call the manifest designer. It's a UI tool. And all you need to do is check the box for the location that you want your app to access. So if you're building a music app, you'll say, hey, I want my app to access the music library. And all you need to do is go check that box in the manifest designer, and voila, your app actually has access to that location. If there are other locations that you are interested in sourcing your information from or sourcing your files from, you can do so by using what we call the file picker. So that is the biggest differentiator, because guess what? You're building your application for a PC. Because if we were a phone OS, this wouldn't matter, right? PCs have a real file system. Users create real files and real folders on a file system. And we want to make sure every Metro-style application gets access to that information. Then, if you want access to your other locations, as I said, such as external drives or network drives, you can get that via the picker. And finally, you can access your local files, on a website or your web backend via the manifest. And the capability talk I referenced earlier will get into more detail there. So what are the building blocks? How did we enable this, right? Because guess what? It's new, it's unprecedented. Everything we're talking about has been designed with the point of view of reimagining Windows. So there are 4 key things that I want to talk to you about today. So let's start off with number 1. So the first thing we'll talk about is how you get parity file system access in your Metro-style apps. So your Metro-style apps get access to not only just locations, so it's just not opening and saving files from locations on your file system, but also all other file system operations that make the Windows file system as powerful as it is. So you can actually get properties for your system, for the files. You can search files. You can get metadata for the files. You can copy, rename, move, delete files. Everything that you could do with Win32 in the past, you can still do in the reimagined Metro file system access model. The second thing we'll talk about is how you can easily build great gallery views for local files. And so essentially think of it as if you have a scenario which requires beautiful views of local data, you can easily do that using the controls and the platform we have put in place. The third thing we'll talk about is how you can easily interchange between abstractions. Because depending on the scenario, depending on the framework, depending on the kind of app you're interested in writing, sometimes you think of files as blobs. Sometimes you think of files as streams. Sometimes you want just a file item. So how do you interchange between one representation to another is the third thing we'll talk about. And then finally, we'll talk about app-to-app contracts. That's the most exciting thing that you saw yesterday. It makes the user experience so much richer as more and more apps get installed. The system experience just shines. And your app can participate in these without having to know what other apps are installed on the system. So think about this as a web of apps and how you can participate and enable the web of apps experience on the Windows PC is what we'll discuss today. So that said, these four components make up for our file access. So these are the building blocks. These are the logical building blocks that we'll talk about today. So the first thing we'll talk about is how do you do the bread and butter? Like how do you basically access the file system? How can you do basic file system operations? And what does that really mean? So as I already talked about, there are two ways any Metro-style app can access the file system. And by access, what I mean is programmatic access. So if you want an app, think of an app which, once it gets installed, it queries the music library, right, and creates a view of the files in the music library. The app can programmatically access the music library through the declarative access model. So all you need to do is, in the app manifest, say you are interested in music library, the location. And once you say that, you get programmatic access to that location. So it's not just the music library, it's the four most used locations on the PC. It's the pictures, documents, videos, and music locations, or music libraries, or known folders, as we have called them in the past, which are available via the manifest. Any other location which is on the PC, or think of a network drive, think of an external drive which is connected to your PC, is still accessible, but that would require user consent. And the way you get user consent is via the file picker. And once the user says, yeah, it's OK for me to go access this data on this particular external drive, your application can actually access it. So we'll talk like a lot about this stuff tomorrow. So tomorrow we have a deeper drill down into the file access APIs, and we'll actually get into the nuts and bolts of the system. So once you get access to these locations, as I mentioned earlier, you can do full enumeration of files and folders. You can do rich search and metadata pivots for files. You have access to thumbnails and properties of files. And then you get the core file actions, which is what makes Windows very unique. Because like think of any core file action that you do today, you'll still be able to do in your Metro-style app. So I'll start off by giving a quick demo. So since we were talking about music apps, so here's a music app that I wrote over the last long weekend and spent like a couple of days building this. So this is a music app which is querying my local file system and taking all the music in my music folder and organizing it by album. No, by artist. So essentially, it organizes the music by artist, and then it also gets additional metadata for each of the songs and for the artist. So for example, it gets the album art, and uses that to create this beautiful view. It uses our system list view control. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So it took me like a little over a day to write this app. And that, for me, was a great experience. Trust me, like I spent more time coming up with the name of the app than actually coding the app. And fortunately, no, I'm right-brained. I'm like, left-brain challenged sometimes. And fortunately, my wife was there to help me, and she's like the artsy kind. So what she, between her and Windows 8 file access, it was a win-win for me. No complaints, But, so again, this is a JavaScript app, because I wanted to experience JavaScript and see how a JavaScript app would look. So it uses the HTML5 audio control to play the songs. So let's drill into an album. Come on. Oops. The joys of alpha software. But trust me, it plays. Okay. Oops. This was me. It wasn't the platform. OK, there's something weird going on. Anyways, I'll just bring up the app. I won't drill into the view, because it doesn't like me drilling into the view for some reason. So it always happens. It was working fine before I walked on stage, and then I didn't pray to the demo gods enough today. So yeah, come find me, and I'll show you the app working after the talk if you're interested. So yeah, so essentially what you would see in that view is, you'll see a list of you'll see the songs by this artist listed. You'll see the properties for each song. You'll see the ratings control. Oh, I even wired up search, because search is available in this location. So say I was looking for an artist starting with V. So I see all the recommendations from the system indexer showing up here. So I didn't have to build any search functionality. I didn't have to build any indexing functionality. I click on various artists, and I basically get the song that I'm interested in. So the whole experience, again, this app was not written for massive consumption. It was written just for this demo. It took a little over a day to do. And the experience was enlightening. It was awesome. So it uses, as I said earlier, it uses the file APIs. It declares access. It says, hey, I'm interested in the music library location. And it queries the music library. And it organizes the songs by artist. So now coming back to the presentation, so this is the code that I have. So essentially, I declare access to the music library. I don't even have to write three lines of XML here. I use Manifest Designer. It's just a box I need to check, and voila, I'm done. I enumerate all the songs in that location. So it's easy to enumerate songs. You just say, the library.getFileAsync. Async is the whole WinRT way of getting information. For any operation that will take 50 milliseconds or more, we have async APIs, and this is one of them. And then if I wanted to operate on those files, once I had a file, I could call the delete method on it or the rename method on it. So it's very simple, very intuitive, very powerful, and very rich. So that's the one thing that I wanted to make sure it was very obvious, even though the demo didn't work. Then we have talked a lot about the file picker. So what is the file picker? The file picker is a rich browser of your local files. So it's basically a browsing view which enables users to quickly navigate all the file system locations and others where the information might be stored. So, and then it's optimized for the opening and saving of files. So what the file picker enables you to do is to easily open and save files. It has two different views that it supports. It has a photo view or a thumbnail view, which I think you saw in a lot of demos yesterday. And it's got a list or an attachment view, which you can use if your scenario is around generic file picking. So the thumbnail view is something that you'll use for, for music sometimes, but mostly for photos. But the attachment view is what you'll use for any generic file access scenario in your app. Apps, so if you're building a Metro-style app, you get to specify what files you are interested in picking. So you can tell the picker, like, hey, when you come up, here are the 3 file types I want to support in my scenario, so please filter everything else out. So when the picker comes up, it's not a generic file dialog that shows every possible file, whether your app can support it or not. It'll just show you being you, the user, the files that the app can actually support for that scenario. And then it has a basket model. And the basket model enables multi-selection across a range of file system locations. So the best way to learn more about this is via a quick demo. So I launched this app. I'm already there. I press the home button. All right. And I say, I want to pick music. So what you see here is the file picker in the attachment mode or the list mode. It gives me a view of my music library, all the songs that I have there. So let me just go here. I go to music. So these are all the songs I have in my local library. Say I wanted to sort the name by date. I get that information. It has semantic zoom. So it tells me if I want to quickly navigate. So I had only 30 songs here, but what if I had 5,000 songs? So I can actually use semantic zoom, and it gives me 2 views. It gives me a date view and a name view. So going back to the sort, I go to sort by name, and I do semantic zoom. It gives me a grid, so I can easily go. I want to see a song that starts with a T. So essentially, you get right there. And then it's opening the picker in the multi-selection mode. So as I select songs, you will see the basket. So the basket at the bottom denotes my current selection, and it's just not tied to a location. So the picker gives me full fidelity access to my whole file system. So look at all the locations which are available to my app here. And then I may want to pick music from my C drive, which is not part of my music library. So I go to computer, go to my C drive, I have a music folder there, and I say, oh, I want to select all these songs. So I select all these songs, they're selected, I open them, and there's been some playback error. But the dynamic playlist will start playing at that point in time. So that was the picker in the general file picking mode. What about the picker in the photo picking mode? So let's go to my app here, Twitterama, right? So Twitterama, I want to basically post a photo. So I bring up the picker. OK, well, let's start. All right. So it brought up the picker in the photo mode this time, and I see all my photos. But this is optimized for photo picking. What if I wanted more information about these photos? How can I get that information? So all I need to do is press and hold, and it actually gives me a tooltip, which has more information about that file. So again, press and hold. It tells me the file name, the size of the file, when it was created, where it's stored on my local PC. That information is there. But we didn't want to add the noise to the basic browsing experience, so we just made that information available only when you needed it. And again, you have semantic zoom here as well, or over here. So if I want to see photos which were taken in September 2009, they're the ones at the end of the view. I can quickly navigate across my photo collection using the file picker. All right. So that, coming back to the slide deck, That was a quick overview of the trust broker, the file APIs, and the picker. And essentially, everything that you can do today is available to your MetroStyle app in the new app model, highly optimized for touch. And basically, it's something that is a big differentiator for your apps because you can actually leverage the power of the file system in your app, in your scenarios. The next thing I wanted to talk about was I'll quickly show the code. So if you want to invoke the picker, you just create the file open picker. You saw Antoine actually write this code, so I'm going to go really fast through it. You can open the picker in the single file picking mode or the multi-file picking mode. You can specify the file types you want to filter the views by. And then you can also designate the kind of viewing mode you want, whether you want the thumbnail or the photo mode, or the list or the attachment mode. Very easy, very intuitive, 5 lines of code, and you saw that like yesterday happen over and over again. Alash talked about this, and so did Antoine. So File Broker and Picker offer apps full access to the file system while keeping the user in control. Right? At the end of the day, the core of the crux of the app model is the user confidence. We want users to feel really good and confident about the apps that they are using, so that the apps are only doing things that they feel the apps should be doing. And that's where the Trust Broker, the Picker, and the File APIs come into play for local file system access. So the next thing we're going to talk about is building compelling views of local files easily. So before I start talking about this aspect, many of us who have either worked on applications which are media or photo related, or have or use those applications. I think all of us in this room use applications which are about about looking at your photos or playing back your music or your videos. What you see in these applications is essentially a gallery of your local files. So a photo app, when it launches, it shows you all the files on your local file system, and it creates this beautiful gallery view for you so that you can easily see what files you have in your collection. Now, today, if you had to build a view like that, or today, if you had to actually build an experience like that, what you would need to do as a developer would be come up with a way of groveling or indexing the file system so that you have a snapshot of what the file system has, because you want your view to be powered by your snapshot of the system. You need to figure out how to deal with change notifications, because what if one of the files changed in some other app because the user was using multiple apps at the same time? So you want your view to be always true. You want it to reflect the reality. You also want your application to show rich thumbnails. So essentially, you end up building your own thumbnails, and then you have to figure out where to store these thumbnails. And then, if you want you want fast, performant scrolling behavior, what you end up doing is you end up building the virtualization, devirtualization logic in your app, so that as the user pans from page 1 to page 2, you tear down page 1, build up page 2, so that it looks like fast and fluid, and you're not taking up a lot of memory, a lot of resources. In Windows 8, actually, you don't have to worry about all this. We have list view. List view is essentially our signature control for building lists of collections, or views of collections. We have a component called the data source adapter, which sits between the list view and the file system and the indexer, and it takes care of everything for you. We use the system indexer to keep the snapshot of the system. We use the system indexer to deal with change notifications. The data source adapter has the virtualization, devirtualization logic. The data source adapter figures out how to get the thumbnails from the system cache. So again, we use the system cache for storing thumbnails. And then the data source adapter is responsible for displaying the thumbnails. So the thumbnails get rendered in the reading order. So going back to the Twitter app, so essentially, you see this view here. All right. So you see this view here. It's my file picker pivoted on my pictures library. You're seeing all my pictures here. Look at the thumbnails. Like, it's fast, it's fluid, it's always there. Like, it's no longer like you scroll into the view and you see empty white space, and then you see like the thumbnails show up like slowly because they're catching up with the view. All that has been changed. All that has been reimagined for Windows 8. And let me just go back and show you a sample app which uses the list view data source adapter. So this is the sample app, right? It uses the list view data source adapter to create a view of the same location in my file system. So it's the same photos that you were seeing in the picker, exactly the same photos, right? So black is app, and green is system, right? System, app, app, system. So essentially, whatever is available to the system is now available to your app. But guess what? In order to get this view in my app, I had to write 4 lines of code. Gone are the days when I had to write my own indexing system, my own caching system. So essentially, even before I started working on the app in the past, I would have had to write 10,000 lines of code just to get the infrastructure up and running, right? Now, I can do the same by writing 4 lines of code. Now, that's freaking amazing. I think it's amazing. What do you think? You like it? You like it? We all like it. We all like few lines of code because we all want to focus on the value prop of our application. We all want to focus on the core scenarios we want to enable. We don't want to write the same infrastructure code like project to project to project because guess what? That's how things have happened in the past. So it's a new world. It's a reimagined world. And we need to build apps that actually leverage the power of the system. Right? Like, let me tell you one thing. I wouldn't have done this in the old world. This was too daunting for me. So this was one of the reasons, like, now if I was building an app which needed a local gallery view, I'll use the list view adapter, write the 4 lines of code, I'm done. So coming back to my talk, let me show you the 4 lines of code. The proof is in the pudding. So essentially, all I had to do was tell the app, hey, I want to the app had to declare in the manifest that it wanted to access the pictures library because that's a new app model. It basically got a handle to the library, and then it had to configure what we call the data source. So as part of the configuration of the data source, the app said, hey, I'm interested in creating a view of my pictures. I want thumbnails of 192 pixels each, and I want it to be async, right? So that was like the second line of code. It's a long line of code, but it's 1 line of code. I'm not, just want to make sure. Then you had to configure the list view, and you had to tell the list view, hey, here's the data source adapter that I want you to use, and please initialize yourself in the grid layout. And then all I had to do was call the list view and tell it, hey, list view, show up. Realize yourself. And voila, magic happened. All right? So that is possible in Windows 8. So you can build great gallery views of local files, great collection views of your local files very easily without having to deal with the mechanics that you had to in the past. 4 lines of code, please remember. Finally, the other thing I wanted to talk about was the type interchange. So as I mentioned earlier on in the beginning part of my talk, depending on what scenarios we have worked on, like everybody in this room comes from a very different background. We've all have had our diverse set of experiences. Some of us are used to dealing with files as items. Some of us have always thought about files as blobs because we have focused on web scenarios. We have focused on web apps in our past. Some of us worked on media scenarios, and we think of files as streams. So it becomes very cumbersome today to go from one form to the other. So in Windows 8, what we have done is we have made it easy and seamless for you to easily change one abstraction into the other without having to do all the hard work, without having to figure out, OK, I want a blob, but the blob needs to have a URI, so I need to create a URI, and I need to package the blob in this way. like it's all mechanics. Like you have to focus on your scenarios and not figuring out how to come up with the infrastructure for your scenarios. So the type interchange layer, for example, makes it easy to go from one abstraction to the other. So you can bring forward your existing knowledge, your existing experiences and expertise, and start building great Windows 8 applications. So what this enables for all Windows 8 applications is a set of scenarios that have not been imagined yet. It enables possibilities that are unbounded. So think about a scenario, right? Like, so as I said, a file could be a URL, a file could be a stream, a file could be a blob, a file could be a file item, right? Like those are all representations of a file. But think of a scenario. What if you wanted to play back a video, all right? You wanted to play back a video while transcoding the video on the fly. Just to complicate things a little, after the video was uploaded to a service of your choice, and to make things even more complicated, after picking the service from your local file system, picking the file from your local file system. So you go from representation 1, 2, 3, 4, and imagine like if you had to build an application that did this. Less than 10 lines of code in Windows 8. And let me show you how. So going back, so essentially what you see in this app is a video. This is the building Windows 8 video, which went live early summer. It's on YouTube. It's got 5 million plus hits. So right now I'm streaming this video from the MSDN website. So the MP4 file is on the MSDN website, and that's where I'm streaming it from. So, right? So and it's using the HTML5 video tag to play the video. That's easy to do, right? Because HTML5, video tags, stream, is basically a URL. HTML5 video tag knows how to deal with URLs. And then you basically go to this screen, which is my app. But what if I wanted to play a local file in the same video tag? I'm a little crazy, so I want to do that, right? So I go bring up the picker. I've got a bunch of files. What video do you want to see? I like well, let's try the Bing video. It's the Bing commercial, which was on TV. I don't know what's wrong with my playback today. Let me start it again. All right. Trust me, it plays the video back. All right. There's something wrong with playback, because the audio didn't play back and the video playback is not happening. So we need to probably drill deeper into that. So essentially what you would see is you'll see the same app start playing the local video seamlessly. And the way that happens is via the file type interchange. And the way we do that, to be honest, all I did was I called the picker, and I asked the picker to invoke itself in the video picking mode. So essentially, I said I want to look at all the the MP4 files and all the .wmv files. And then I selected the file as a user. And the moment my selection was persisted, the file was passed back to the application. And then I took the application, one line of code, converted that into a blob, and got a URL for the blob. That's all I had to do. So that is possible in Windows 8 because of the work that teams across Windows have done. So essentially, this is something that, sometimes things take, it takes a village to do things. This was like one of those things, because we wanted to make it easy and seamless for all developers to go from one abstraction of a file to another abstraction of the file, of the same file, without actually converting the file. So seamless interchange between your web and local file representation for your scenarios, totally possible. You saw it happen, and it's one line of code. Do try it out. And finally, our signature, app-to-app contract. You've heard a lot about this, but here's the core promise. Since I was involved with the making of the sausage, I can talk to you about some of our core premises behind app-to-app picking. So all of us are very mobile, right? All of us travel a lot. We are always on the go. All of us, at the very, I think everybody in this room probably fits the persona. We walk around with our phones. We use our phones as our way to capture information around us. So, a lot of us have taken photos of the Build conference since yesterday, and we've been posting them to our favorite social networking sites. So, you may post it to, like Twitter or Facebook or wherever, because that's what we do, right? That's the thing to do. But over a period of time, as you start pushing more and more information to these apps, essentially what happens is they become repositories. They become places which collect your data. Like you push, because you want your information to stay there so that your friends and family and people you care about can easily access them. But your mental model is like, hey, you start thinking of these locations as actual file locations. You're like, my photos are on SkyDrive. My photos are on Photo Gallery. And you start associating them. You start talking about them. You start referring to them as locations. So if apps are turning into locations, then why not show apps in the same context? Why not show apps as other locations available for the picking scenario? So we are still in the photo picking scenario here on Twitterama, right? So we wanted to see, I wanted to post a photo to Twitterama. Let me bring it up. There's something wrong with Twitterama. Right now. All right. And you've seen the scenario so many times, like yesterday, that, I know that you know what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to show you really quickly. So I bring up Socialite. Socialite launches up, shows me my photos. These are my personal photos, which I keep on my favorite social networking site, which, all of us do. I select a photo, and I say I want to import it, and it's selected for the tweeting for tweeting via Twitterama. So all that information is available to me, and I can actually go from app A to app B seamlessly. And Twitterama and Socialite had no knowledge of each other, right? It was all about the user experience. I as a user wanted to pick, and the apps I cared about, which I had taken the time to install, participate in this experience, and they make the experience much richer. Otherwise, today, if I didn't have app-to-app picking, what would normally happen is I would need a way to get the information out of Socialite to my PC, and then I would need a way to push the information back to Twitterama through my PC, and this information could be pushed back and forth via channels such as email, or actually right-click, save as picture, save it on your local hard drive, and then you upload the photo to Twitterama. So it's not as seamless. There's a lot of steps involved. So what we did was we made this core experience that people cared about easy, and we actually made sure that there was core value proposition for developers, right? Like you want your applications to be used as, as repositories for users' information. This is the way to participate. Like you basically make an application which participates in the app-to-app picking contract, and voila, like your application is available to the user in various experiences that you don't even have to design for, you don't even have to think for. Just by participating in that contract, you light up the experience across the system. So coming back to the slide, as I said, users think about the content in a very app-centric way. That's come to be. That's the model now, because we create content on the fly. We push a lot of content to these services regularly, and we are accumulating a lot of our information as users on these apps and services. So we just need to make sure that we have a way of getting this information back and forth between applications. And then the file picker contract enables the seamless integration with the system file picking experience. So for example, Socialite showed up in the picker as a location. Socialite owned the view that you saw in the UI, and the rest of the Chrome around it was actually the picker Chrome. So Socialite participated in things like the basket, the system basket. Socialite was part of, showed up as a location in the jump list that showed up at the top of the picker. And Socialite was a location which was highly customized for its own picking experience, because we believe that apps understand the data and the users the best. So Socialite has a list of all my friends. Socialite has a list of a lot of information. It has a list of all the photos that I was tagged in. So it can create interesting, beautiful views for me based on the information it has on me. It doesn't have to share that information with anybody else. But it can fulfill my scenarios in other places by participating in these contracts. So we just saw the demo. So here's the thing. The photos that you saw, the photo that I picked from Socialite was actually coming from the web, because it was just a view of the information which was in the Socialite backend. But it doesn't matter where the information was coming from, where the file was coming from. The file could have been local. The file could have been in the app data. The file could have been on the local file system. It doesn't matter. App-to-app picking actually abstracts the point of origin and the point of storage of the file from the other applications on the system. So Twitterama just knew about the invocation of the file picker. All Twitterama had to do was like, hey, for this scenario, I need to invoke the file picker. Socialite, and I'll tell you what Socialite had to do, had to just adhere to its part of the contract. And then Twitterama and Socialite, they basically never had to know of each other's existence, but they participated in this very powerful end-to-end experience. And that's what's possible using the app-to-app contract today. We have another app-to-app contract called sharing, or share, which is about in-context, lightweight sharing of files and information. So we have a whole hour-long talk on it tomorrow. So if you're interested in learning more about sharing, I would recommend you go spend the 60 minutes there. It's a great talk, and there's a lot to learn there. So coming back to the presentation, so how does Socialite participate in the app-to-app picking contract? So the first thing it has to do is to register for that contract in the manifest. So it basically says, hey, I want to participate in the file picking contract, or the Windows.FilePicker extension. That's what the manifest calls it. It then connects itself to the picker basket. So when it gets activated in the picker, it basically says, hey, once I'm activated, I want to be part of the picking experience. So basically, it registers itself for that picking experience. And then finally, because it's a location, and since the picker is optimized for opening and saving files, it basically registers for and handles the addition and removal of files. So when the user selects a file, the view needs to reflect it. When the user unselects a file, the view needs to reflect it, and the basket needs to reflect the same thing. All that is handled by these events. So app-to-app contracts make the experience much better, and it only gets further and further better as more and more apps are installed. So think of a Windows where as users start acquiring applications, and as more and more applications are participating in these contracts, how rich and how contextual that experience could be, and how wonderful it would be for one of your apps to be like a participant or a consumer of these contracts. So just to recap the things we talked about today. First, the file broker and picker. They offer apps full fidelity access to the file system while keeping the user in control. The operating word here, or operating words here, are keeping the user in control, because that's the core promise of our app model. It's very easy to build compelling, beautiful views of local data in your app without doing all the grunt work. How many lines of code? 4 lines of code. And then finally, it's easy, seamless to transform your abstraction from one form to the other. So like, depending on your scenario, you want to go from a blob to a URL or a URL back to a blob. Don't have to worry about all the magic there. The system provides you the necessary methods, the necessary functionality to easily go from one form to the other. We do all the work for you so that you can focus on your core scenarios and your core experiences. And then finally, app-to-app contracts, that's where the magic happens. All right? So they make the experience much better. They're very fulfilling for the user, and they offer great opportunities for applications and developers. Because who wouldn't want to be the photo provider for a photo picking experience on the system in addition to the local file system view, right? Like, if I'm a photo app and I want to be used as a photo app, then I want to participate in these contracts because I want users to start putting their data into me because I want to be the handler of their data for them. That's my value. That's my value prop. That's my secret sauce. And that offers unlimited opportunities to developers. So here are some related sessions that you would be interested in. So I showed you the search functionality in the app, in the music app. There's a whole hour-long talk tomorrow morning. I think it's at 10:30 tomorrow morning. If you want to learn more about how you can easily integrate into the universal search experience that Windows 8 has, the search charm that Jensen and everybody else talked about, this is the talk to go to. If you want to understand more about building great gallery apps, so I said it was 4 lines of code, but there's more to it. Like, what if you wanted to add more flavor to your views? Because I just used the standard platform view and created an app for you, but there's more flexibility, more customization available there. So if you're interested in that, we have a talk tomorrow on that as well. At 3:30 today, Jeff Johnson is doing a talk on the Windows capability model, so how you can access devices, file system, like everything which is a capability that you saw yesterday and today. What is the premise behind it will all be discussed in detail by Jeff Joe today. So I recommend you attend Jeff's talk if you're interested in that space. And then I talked about share. We have a talk tomorrow on this. And finally, file type associations and autoplay. That is something that every developer, every app cares a lot about. Like, how do you become the handler for a particular file type? So if I have a music app, how do I make that app be the handler for all MP3s on the system? That is possible through our file association model, which again has been reimagined. So we carried forward the goodness from the past, but we also reimagined it for the modern scenarios and the modern platform and the modern experience. And the same thing with autoplay. So device activation. So how do you make your app respond to file protocols and device activations will be covered in detail tomorrow. So if you're interested in that area, I think anyone who's an app developer would be. That's the talk to go to. And then here are some links. So once you actually see the slide deck on in the Build app, you'll be able to click on these links and go to our developer center where more information is available. So you can actually get more details and more information and more data on everything we discussed today. My name is Manav, and I will be available at the booth after this talk. So if you have any questions, feel free to come get me. The one thing that I want to leave you with, because we talked about a lot of different things today, so it's going to take time to consume and digest the information. So if you were to remember only one thing after this talk, I humbly request this be it. In Windows 8, Metro-style applications have access to everything the OS has access to, plus more, with minimal amount of code. Like, as a developer, as an application, you don't need to do a lot of the work because we do the work for you. And we would like you to focus on writing great code for your experiences, for your scenarios, and let the platform do what it's promising it would do for you. All right? So I'm going to repeat again. In Windows 8, your applications have access to everything that the OS has access to and more, because app-to-app is something which most apps didn't have access to because it didn't exist until today. But you can get all of this by writing very few lines of code, because that's one of the core promises we have made across the platform. It's just not file access. Like you saw John Sheehan and Alesh talk about this over and over again yesterday. And we basically maintain the same promise in the file access offering as well. So it was a great pleasure talking to you all. We had a few demo challenges, but thank you for the opportunity. And I'm here for the next couple of days. If you see me, stop me. We'd love to chat with you. And it was great talking to you this afternoon. Thank you.